Welcome to ENB's Dark Souls Weapon Guide. In this guide, I'll show you the location and moveset for each weapon in the game. I'll also talk about any special properties that the weapons might have, and of course any lore information that I have on each weapon. Also note that you need the rare weapons for a trophy or achievement depending on your platform as well. So, today let's start off by looking at the daggers. The first dagger type weapon is the dagger. It can be bought from the merchant in the upper Undead Burg. Easy to get to, easy to access from the beginning of the game. It's also starting equipment for sorcerers. The dagger is one of the weakest weapons in the entire game. Its base attack power is 56, but it does have some scaling. Now, unupgraded, it scales at an E rating with strength and a B rating with dexterity. It's got a high crit rating at 131, so it can do extra damage with backstabs and ripostes. Due to its low base damage, however, it's not really great with this either. On top of that, this is a short weapon with really low range. So you may ask, is there any reason to use a dagger? Well, it does in fact have several useful properties. First, it's light. It only weighs 0.5 units. Second, it can be buffed with a resin, a sorcery, a miracle to add bonus damage, so it can be buffed. Third, it attacks really quickly, and that is especially useful when you use weapon buffs, because weapon buffs add a flat damage bonus per swing, so faster hits mean more damage from your buff. Fourth, the dagger uses very little stamina, so you can attack many times over before depleting your stamina, even if you have low endurance. And finally, the dagger has both slashing and thrusting attacks, and that's pretty helpful, but once again do note that the range is short. This weapon is most useful for builds that use weapon buffs, but is ultimately not a recommended weapon. Having said that, I'd like for you to keep in mind that Dark Souls is all about how you use what you have, so this dagger in the hands of a player like Vageta 311 is more than enough to clear the game at starting level. And yeah, it's about how you use what you have rather than what you have, but having said that, this is not one of my recommended weapons. And there really isn't any lore for this item either, however it is the starting equipment of sorcerers, so perhaps it is widely used in Vinheim. Probably easy to conceal under a cloak if you are a sound sorcerer, a slash assassin, a spy from Vinheim. The Ghost Blade is one of the most difficult to farm weapons in the game. There are only two enemies that drop it, and they are the Screaming Ghosts of New Londo. There's only two of them. As with all drops, make sure to have at least one humanity in your counter, and more is better, and equip the covetous Gold Serpent Ring. Also remember that you need to either be cursed, have a cursed weapon, or use a transient curse to hit the ghosts. The transient curse method is recommended, and they will also drop from the ghosts. Note that this weapon is not the jagged Ghost Blade. That's a curved sword that drops from normal ghosts. This is a dagger, and it only drops from the two screamers, also called banshees by the player base. After you have lowered the ladder, you can use the farming path that I am showing now, and I'm showing two different methods. One involves running through the ghost house and fighting the ghost on the outside, and this is recommended if you have low poise. The other is quicker if you have good poise and can take a few hits. Stock up on homeward bones before you begin, and depending on your luck, it won't take too long in the end. But I killed 29 screaming ghosts before I got the drop. I did one run to clear the area, 13 farming runs with no results, and I got it on the first kill of the 14th run, so I had 11 humanity and I was using the Gold Serpent Ring. I highly recommend getting this on your first playthrough if you're wanting to get it for the trophy. Just go ahead and knock it out, get it out of the way. The enemies get stronger on New Game Plus and you probably just don't want to deal with it. Good luck. This weapon has the highest base damage of all the daggers, and a critical rating of 127, so it does pretty decent critical hits. It scales with an E rating with strength. But this weapon's strong point is definitely backstabs and riposte. That's definitely the strong point of this weapon, because it cannot be buffed and it does not cause bleed. So really, despite its high base damage, I personally find the Ghost Blade to be an inferior form of the Bandit Knife, because they serve kind of the same purpose, but the Bandit Knife has some added bonuses and it can be buffed. That's a really big one. But the Ghost Blade does have one advantage, however, and that is that it upgrades via Twinkling Titanite, so you don't have to waste a slab on it. But given that the Ghost Blade is a rare drop in the first place, that doesn't really help too much. So it does have unique rapid slashes on the R2 attack, which, if the weapon could be buffed, would be great, but once again, it can't be buffed, so the rapid slashes don't really help too much. Also, it is listed as being a slash thrust type weapon, but it basically uses mostly slashes. The Ghost Blade is a cursed weapon and therefore can damage ghosts without the need for transient curses. But I do have one more really great thing to say about this weapon. It doesn't have a sheath. So if you are looking for a weapon for use with any of the slim armor sets and the floating sheath nonsense annoys the shit out of you like it does me, consider this weapon. From a lore perspective, this weapon is held by the ghosts of New Londo, and we think that perhaps they were killed either by the Sealers when they flooded the city, or perhaps by the Dark Wraiths. And in recent days, I've begun to think that Frampt, Kingseeker Frampt, is the one who suggested that the Sealers flood the city. This is my speculation, but I think Frampt was involved in the flooding of the city. Next up is the Bandit's Knife, which is basically the best motherfucking dagger. It has the same base damage and scaling as the dagger, but it has a critical rating of 147. Yes, that is the highest critical boost in the game. It does a ton of damage on backstab, a ton of damage on riposte. It's really powerful in that respect. Additionally, it causes bleeding. And on top of that, it can be buffed. So if you are looking for a dagger to use as your primary weapon, this is basically the best choice. Thieves start with this for free, but other characters can farm them from the Hollow Thieves in the lower Undead Burg. Remember to get here, use the basement key from the church steps on the locked door near Solaire on the Dragon Bridge. What the fuck was up with that sentence? Anyway, you will probably pick one of these up if you're farming for the Hollow Thieves' sick-ass armor set. This weapon can do brutal critical hits in PvP when combined with the Hornet Ring, Crystal Magic Weapon, Dark Moon Blade, etc. make this very deadly for PvE as well because of the fast attack rate. Most of the things that I said about the daggers, quick attacks, and low stamina use apply here. The bleed damage is just an amazing bonus, and I'm trying to be fair to all of the weapons here, but this is the best dagger. It just is. It combines the ability to be buffed, speed, low weight, and low stamina consumption of the dagger, and adds critical damage and a bleed effect. The only thing that I can say about this that might be a negative compared to the dagger is that the Bandit's Knife only uses slashes. There are no thrusting attacks. Note that I'm not talking about the standard forward R2. I'm talking about in the item description it says slash only. That said, the R2 button or second heavy attack swipes give the blade more effectiveness against a crowd than a thrusting attack would, so that's basically another advantage. And it looks fucking nasty too, y'all. Once again, this is a basic weapon with not much lore to it, so, you know, it's a thief's weapon. It's a thief's weapon. Now, the Parrying Dagger is an unusual weapon. It can be found in the ruins of New Londo. And remember, once again, you need a curse of some sort to battle the ghosts. The Parrying Dagger isn't meant to be used in the right hand. You can, but it isn't significantly different from a normal dagger in that case. In fact, I think it's identical, really. But when you equip it in the left hand, it has a special parry animation. Just like the buckler and target shield, the Parrying Dagger gives you a slightly longer window in which to land a parry. But unlike the buckler or target shield, you can't use it to block. So that basically makes this an inferior choice to those shields. It looks cool, and believe me, I love to use it, but it's probably not the best choice, because if you have a target shield or a buckler or something, you can still block if there's a magic attack or something coming your way, and you can't parry. But you can't do that here. Having said that, the one situation I could think of, a heavy weapon user could potentially offhand this weapon to use against poiseless enemies, because it does have a fast attack that you can use to interrupt your opponent. And you know, with the new PvP mode coming in the new content, that may actually have to strategize like that. I don't know. But it does require 14 dexterity to use, which means many strength builds won't be able to use the Parrying Dagger. Stick with a target shield is basically my advice. Parrying Daggers are used by the Knights of Kareem, who are famous for not using shields. So Lawtrack uses it, I think Oswald uses it, and the Dark Moon Knightus uses it too. And I uses it too as well. But only when I'm trying to look cool, which is always. The last weapon for today is the oh so elusive Priscilla's Dagger. First, you need to go to the painted world of Aramis. You need the peculiar doll to gain access. Then touch the large painting in Anne Orlando. Proceed through the level and go to the boss fog. You get this weapon by cutting off Priscilla's tail. However, the hoochie likes to turn invisible. In order to get her to become visible again, you essentially need to stagger her. It is not based on damage. It is not based on fire attack or element or anything like that. It's not. It's based off staggering her. A lot of people like to use pyromancy to get the weapon, but I have a tendency to kill her before I manage to cut her tail if I do that. So here's what you do, and I take no credit for this brilliant tactic either. I heard this from a German spy, so you can go tell him thank you, because this is awesome. This is what you do. You hit her with throwing knives. It's pretty much brilliant, really. First of all, when you stick her with the first one, it stays there for a while so you can see her movement. Second, they don't do jack squat for damage, so there's no risk of killing her. Third, if you hit her with several in quick succession, it will break her poise and cause her to become visible. You can then cut the tail at your leisure, and more importantly, see her life bar. So if she's low on health, just quit to the menu and you will reload outside the boss battle. She'll be at full health and you can just try again. Thank you, Mr. Spy. This was a great idea. This is a reliable and elegant solution. It doesn't require fog ring shenanigans or anything like that. Any build can use this technique. Just bring throwing knives. And you can even farm those from the Painting Guardians in Anne Orlando if you forgot to bring them. So this is the best solution I have seen to get Priscilla's Dagger. So what about the weapon? Priscilla's Dagger has decent base damage and an A scaling with dexterity, which actually increases when you upgrade it. It does not have a good critical rating, it's just a standard 100, and very sadly it cannot be enchanted or buffed in any way. It does have a unique moveset. However, the main draw of this weapon is the bleed damage that it can deal. It can tear off 50% of an enemy's HP upon a successful bleed, just like the Life Hunt Scythe. Unlike the Life Hunt Scythe though, Priscilla's Dagger does not have a negative effect on your status. However, the bleed buildup of Priscilla's Dagger is much slower than the Life Hunt. This is how I use Priscilla's Dagger. I offhand that bitch. I use it as a secondary in my offhand whenever I am using a main hand weapon that can cause bleed. So once you know that your enemy is close to bleeding out, you just hit them with an offhand attack or two and you'll get the extra bleed damage for free. The problem is it's unreliable in PvP since enemies can reset the bleed meter and different opponents will have different levels of resistance, so you don't really know when they're about to bleed out. But it works pretty well in PvE. The only problem there being that most of the enemies that bleed aren't difficult to beat in the first place. But this is another sheathless dagger, so it's got 6 style. I really love to use this thing. I really love to use it. The moveset is unique and cool as hell. It can be difficult to get used to though. This dagger does seem to have a bit more range than normal daggers, so that's another plus. And did I mention that it has a 110 occult rating? So it will do extra damage to specific enemies. And of course, from the lore perspective, as everyone knows by now, this is a dragon weapon from the crossbreed's tail. It has the life hunt power, which is feared by the gods, which may be part of why Priscilla is in the painted world in the first place. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of the weapons reference guide. This shit seriously took a ton of work to record and edit, so I really hope you guys like it. Remember to check out my site to see the guide in an organized layout. The link to that is in the description. If you feel like I missed something big on one of the weapons, please let me know in the comments below. If you are just absolutely the biggest dagger lover in the world and you're like, dude, you're totally missing out on this one great little trick you can do with a dagger, please tell me about it. I would love to know. I want to know everything there is to know about this game. Later. Later. Dark Souls. DLC. I'm a rock and roll clown.